Jimbo Fisher made some bold statements, James, and of course we're gonna have to revisit this conversation, as we get closer. But I watched some of the spring game this past weekend, replay of the spring game. Jimbo Fisher says that Florida State has established itself as the premier conference in the country. Does he have a valid point? So when you first look at it, you as SEC fans, you say, oh, of course not. But then you stop and you back up a little bit. Is it valid, James? Let's look at a couple things. Let me be careful because I don't want Alabama fans or the SEC fans jumping on me. But how do we determine who's the best? How do you determine who's the best, James? If you're looking for a way to determine who's the best, what are some of your criteria? Would you look at head-to-head matchups? Would you look at wins in the big games? Would you look at bowl games against all conferences? And would you look at coaching? Wouldn't you say that's the criteria that the SEC used for years to define?
I would say that's a good starting point.
Okay. Clemson, national champions last year. Louisville. Where would you put Louisville in the SEC? Would you take Auburn over Louisville? Would you take Mississippi State, Ole Miss? Stop me if you would take Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Arkansas, let me see.
No.
Would you take Missouri?
No.
Maybe. Would you take Florida and Georgia? Maybe.
No.
Maybe. But would you take any of those coaches? Who would you take Louisville? Who would you take over Louisville in the SEC right now? Other than Alabama, maybe LSU? Maybe. I mean, but when you put the coach on it, would you take any coach other than Nick Saban over? Even though he slept with his secretary and all that stuff, the guy can coach.
Notwithstanding the motorcycle incident.
There you go.
I think Arkansas would gladly take back Bobby Petrino at this point.
All right, here's one division of the ACC, the Atlantic. Clemson, Louisville, Florida State. You name 3 teams in the SEC that's better than that top 3 as a combination. There is no combination you would put that's better. Then they have Wake Forest, North Carolina State, Boston College, and Syracuse. That kind of looks like the bottom part of the SEC. ACC, which to me would kind of be the East, right, is Virginia Tech. That I would put them right there with Florida and Georgia with the new coach. Pittsburgh, UNC, Miami is in the middle of the pack. They're on their rise. They're on the rise. Georgia Tech, Duke, and Virginia. When you start looking at that's enough. And let's look at some of the coaches. You got Duke. They got a decent coach. You got Miami. They got a decent coach. UNC got a decent coach. Virginia Tech got a decent coach. Pittsburgh got a decent coach. Actually, all better than almost everybody in the SEC. All those coaches I just named. What's his name at Dino for Syracuse. I mean, he's 2-6, but you give him some of the SEC resources, he might be one of the better coaches in the SEC. What about Florida State, Louisville, and Clemson? So I think from top to bottom, better in the coaching ranks. Okay? They were 9-3 in the bowl games last year. 9-3. They have the best teams, and the last two games where there was an ACC versus SEC championship game, their last three, they're 2-1. Right? They won the last one, which you could say Alabama maybe outplayed Clemson this year and lost. Last year, Clemson outplayed Alabama and lost. And then they beat Auburn. So they're winning in that category. So they're winning in all the major categories that you would rank teams. The ACC is winning. So does he have a point that the ACC is now the best? If you go back and start looking at the data, it's kind of hard. They're better. Anybody that argues that the coaches in the SEC are better than the ACC, they're smoking something. And don't forget that we didn't even count what they did to the SEC in the regular season last year. I don't even know what that stat is. I know that Clemson beat Auburn. Clemson. Do you know Clemson on the way to the championship beat the last?
They were 3-0 in the SEC last year.
Yeah, but listen to this, James. They beat the last 5 champions, if I'm not mistaken. The last 5 different champions. They beat Auburn, national champions. They beat Auburn. They beat Alabama. They beat Florida State,
Ohio State.
That's the last. That's all of the champions back to Auburn's 2000. Florida State's 2013,
and that doesn't even include Oklahoma. That was the runner-up in 2008.
So they have beaten either the champion or the team that played for the national championship. They beat all of them except for Oregon, who was not in it. So maybe they are. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Give your thoughts on it. But we're going to move on from that because, hey, listen, the SEC is going to have a chance to shut them up at the beginning of the season as NC State plays South Carolina, Alabama plays Florida State, Auburn plays Clemson. That's 3 of the mixed games right there, cross-conference games. So we'll see. And if they win those games, baby, they putting the nail in the coffin on the SEC. And, of course, I think Alabama's been carrying that torch for a while.